Welcome to LC Screen Talk. My name is Larry, and today we rank the 2016 comic book films. So for mainstream filmmaking, this was a huge year for comic book adaptations on the big screen. In total, I saw 7 comic book adaptations, and we saw the biggest of the big from all studios hit the multiplexes. But today, we decide, ultimately, who made the best comic book movie this year. Or, just my personal opinion. This is a personal favorites list, so don't chop my head off, and if you disagree, that's great. That's why we all love these movies. Go ahead and put your list down below if/when you disagree with how I rank them. So kicking off at number 7, aka the worst of the comic book films this year, we have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2: Out of the Shadows. So I will admit that my original dislike toward the film has calmed. I've grown to like the film a little bit more since I saw it in the theaters. But ultimately, I still think it is the worst of the comic book films this year. TMNT 2 literally feels like a live-action cartoon to me still, even upon rewatching it. The villains just don't hold up well when they are made into live-action CGI characters. When I watched them in the 90s on the cartoon series that I grew up with, they were wonderful. They were funny, they wwere hilarious. But here, just like having a talking, walking brain didn't work so well for me. Same thing with Bebop and Rocksteady. They never really looked great. The Turtles did look very good here, and I do think we got a little bit more interaction with the Turtles. We had some nice moments with the Turtles, and ultimately that's what kind of made me come around to it a bit more. It's just the characterizations of the Turtles and their interactions together. Because outside of that, there's very little to like. Some kind of lame humor, some okay action sequences, Megan Fox still acting as if she were Megan Fox, Stephen Amell not really doing anything as Casey Jones, Tyler Perry ripped straight out of a cartoon, just overacting to the max, still no good Shredder. The only positive here is that they got the Turtles more right this time than they did in the first film. At number 6, we have Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. The film that divided comic book fans everywhere. And unfortunately, DC fans, I'm sorry. I know you're going to hate me for putting it so low, but I still haven't come around very much to Batman v Superman. Part of the problem was that the first trailer was so amazing, and then they torpedoed themselves with that second trailer right off the bat. And the movie, unfortunately, felt a whole lot more like the second trailer. I think Ben Affleck makes a very strong Batman, maybe one of the best when it comes down to it. And I thought Gal Gadot really surprised as Wonder Woman, and personally, Wonder Woman stole the show for me. I thought she was the best. And that ending action sequence was really fun. That's what I was kind of hoping to see. That's what I wanted from this film. The rest of Batman v Superman took itself entirely too seriously, and thought it was making more of a statement than I think actually came across. Batman's motives were outlined, but can anyone tell me why Superman felt the need to feel so strongly toward Batman as he did? I still have no clue. Jesse Eisenberg was playing the Joker here instead of Lex Luthor. It's been hammered to death, but the resolution between Batman and Superman is just ridiculous. Completely and totally ridiculous. Lois Lane was in the way, annoying, complete, useless character here. And ultimately, the movie is just joyless. The script doesn't do a good enough job bringing the serious material that DC had wanted to life. Instead, it just feels like a slog until we get to where we already know ultimately we're going. At number 5, we have Suicide Squad. That's right, I'm sorry, but both of the films that DC released this year are near the bottom of my ranking. I did, however, enjoy Suicide Squad more than I enjoyed Batman v Superman, and I think there's more to take out of Suicide Squad than Dawn of Justice. For one, visually, it was gorgeous. I thought Suicide Squad brought to life the visuals really, really well. I also think that Harley Quinn was done very well. The costuming was wonderful for her. And the interactions between her and Will Smith were great. I also think Will Smith himself was really strong in this film. And Viola Davis, amazing as usual. It also made me just pine and want for a Joker and Harley Quinn movie. Because while I didn't like those scenes shoved into this movie, I liked them as scenes. Not only were they visually gorgeous, but they had so much more depth than anything else that was presented here that I wish we could have just had a Harley and Joker movie. Abuse and all really delved into what kind of effed up, dysfunctional relationship that truly is. But all of this is to kind of say that Suicide Squad had so many good aspects to it, but they were surrounded by nothing. They brought together an amazingly diverse, well-cast cast, but they didn't do anything with any of that wonderful cast outside of Amanda Waller, Harley Quinn, and Deadshot. The rest of them were all just kind of there. The villain was horrible in this movie. Everybody complains about Marvel villains, but DC, you're not off to much better of a start. And, Suicide Squad was the epitome of that. And then, the quest was just kind of, The quest was just a generic superhero kind of marching toward the villain quest. The only thing that made that semi-enjoyable was that I liked the interactions with the characters, and I kind of enjoyed just being with the characters. But ultimately, Suicide Squad kind of came up feeling like a really pretty movie that had very little going on underneath that pretty surface. So, I really struggled with where to put number 4 and number 3. I kind of were switching them back and forth numerous times, and ultimately I decided at number 4 we have Doctor Strange. So Doctor Strange does a lot of things really, really well. First of all, those visuals, they are amazing. And I think right now this is the shoe-in to win Best Visual Effects. They were so good. And not only that, I have not seen IMAX 3D utilized better in a very, very long time. It was just astounding how this looked in IMAX 3D. It was a complete and total feast visually. And those visuals really immersed you into the film and into this new dimension. It introduced this cool, new area that the Marvel Cinematic Universe can explore. And also, while I had a lot of problems with Tilda Swinton being cast due to whitewashing issues with the Ancient One, and really the lack of Asian actors and actresses being cast in any sort of significant role here, Tilda Swinton really was good. She was the first time a whitewashed role has delivered a performance that at least let you see why they were cast, and at least let you understand that maybe this was a little bit colorblind. They were just casting the best possible person for the role. So I give it up to Tilda Swinton for that, for delivering a performance that helped me to move past the whole whitewashing controversy. And Benedict Cumberbatch as well was so good in the role. He was snarky, he was funny, he brought the dramatics as needed, he really sold the magic scenes. I thought he was an amazing Doctor Strange. I also thought Rachel McAdams played the love interest really well. She wasn't given all that much to do, but this is kind of Rachel McAdams' wheelhouse, and she knocked it out of the park, as she normally does. But what kept Doctor Strange from breaking through into my top 3 was that ultimately, this is Marvel 101. So while it executes the Marvel roadmap perfectly, just executes it all 100% across the board, it just feels like a complete and total retread of all of the other Marvel origin stories. So we have these cool magic frills around, but ultimately, Marvel didn't deviate from their formula at all. So we knew exactly where the beats were headed before we got there, all the way down to not only 1, but 2 extremely weak villains. And the fact that Marvel went ahead with these very weak villains when that's been the chief complaint the entire time is really discouraging, actually. So it seems whenever we have a solo movie, we're not going to get a villain worthwhile anymore. So Doctor Strange is just a really fun, visually beautiful film, but it doesn't have much under the surface there to warrant it really being one of the top films of the year. It's fun, it's a good time, I'll revisit it, but it can't get much higher. So this is probably going to be pretty controversial, but at number 3, I have X-Men Apocalypse. So we're going to get this out of the way right off the bat. I am an X-Men fanboy from the comic books. Yes, the comic books. And I am ranking it this high. And I was a huge fanatic of the X-Men 90s animated series, which really was my introduction that took me back to get into the comic books. But as a fan of X-Men, period, I've actually really enjoyed a majority of these films. I think people are a little bit harsh on the X-Men films unnecessarily, and I think people were a little bit harsh on this X-Men film very unnecessarily. So let's just acknowledge the problems with the film first, and then I'll plead my case on why it's all the way up at number 3. So it does feel a lot like the other X-Men films. Bryan Singer has an air of familiarity about him now. And I think ultimately it felt like such a letdown after Days of Future Past, which I think was fantastic. Just amazing, and it dealt with so many things so amazingly well. That Apocalypse was a good, standard X-Men movie. And unfortunately, Bryan Singer and cast cannot seem to get continuity at all. And that makes me think it is definitely time to move on from Bryan Singer, because clearly he doesn't know how to keep a fluid continuity between his films. He hasn't been able to do it since the very first X-Men, and he still just blatantly ignores the easiest of things to continue. And of course, the ever-revolving problem with the X-Men films is that we have so many characters, we can't really give them enough time. So Jubilee is shown, doesn't do literally anything. We have Archangel/Angel here. Doesn't do anything. Psylocke, not given anything to do. Storm, still highly underused and underutilized. And we also aren't given time to really have those interactions that anybody who's a fan of the X-Men comic books desperately wants. We want those scenes at the mall. We want those scenes inside of the mansion. But we're never given those human interactions in the films, and that's always a bit disappointing for me. Also, Mystique being this hero role is definitely getting old. This is not Mystique, because although she has joined the X-Men from time to time, she is not this person. She's not this mutant. And Jennifer Lawrence clearly just doesn't really like playing Mystique, so it just, having her in the forefront like this was a huge disservice to the whole film. But as a whole, X-Men Apocalypse was a fun, solid X-Men movie. One thing the X-Men series does better than any of these other series, and especially in the last 3 films in particular, is give legitimately great performances from Michael Fassbender and James McAvoy in particular. Michael Fassbender's performance in this film is almost Oscar contention level. I don't think it's quite on that level yet, but it is so good. I mean, he brings so much to his role. James McAvoy as well just brings so much to the character of Professor X, and I think that those two in particular, their connection with each other and just their connection with their characters and the audience elevates the material tenfold. People were really complaining about Apocalypse, and, you know, he was a boring, kind of run-of-the-mill villain. But here's the thing. If you've read the comics, if you've watched the TV series, you know Apocalypse is insanely powerful. I mean, he can bend time, he can travel through time, he can travel through space and teleport. He can do it all. He's basically a god. But he is a central villain for the X-Men series. So we would have all been crying the blues and been upset if Apocalypse had never been introduced to the films. But we get mad when he is introduced and does kind of what Apocalypse does. They did change his backstory, and he did do some kind of dumb stuff like send the nukes into the sky and just blow them up. But I think that especially the backstory were done really well and gave Apocalypse more humanity. Oscar Isaac, I think, also did a very good job differentiating himself from kind of a big, a little bit cheesy villain that we get previously with Apocalypse into something a little bit more dark, a little bit more sinister. And I think, honestly, this is the best Cyclops we've seen on film. I think Jean Grey was done very well. Didn't love the Phoenix storyline. Again, I think maybe they think it's going to be super hard to get an actual Phoenix story. While I didn't love her origin of getting that white hair, especially, Storm was done very well. She was finally given an African accent, and I thought that she was brought to justice here. Plus, that Quicksilver scene, while a retread, up to the ante, which is what you're supposed to do. You take what you've done well before and up the ante on it. So overall, I just think that X-Men Apocalypse got a worse rap than it deserved, and was a fun, nice X-Men film that at least goes in the middle of the X-Men franchise, which has had amazing movies. So being in the middle is not necessarily a bad thing. So, at number 2, we're sticking in the Fox universe, we have Deadpool. So Deadpool ran one of the most flawless ad campaigns I have ever seen for a film. And it definitely paid off. This movie was everything I needed it to be. Ryan Reynolds is perfect as Deadpool. I mean, he completely embodies the character to a T. He was fantastic. Everything I wanted from Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool. Just erased that abomination from the Wolverine movie out of my mind. Also, the jokes landed fast and furious. I mean, this movie was funny through and through. Right from the beginning credit sequences through the end credit sequences. They were super meta. They were so hilarious. I loved the character of Deadpool and his zany, fun lines. I also thought he was badass. He delivered the action sequences really well. We had a solid villain here. Not an amazing villain, but again, a villain with purpose. And an awesome henchwoman by his side who kicks some major ass. And the movie lived up to that R rating in every sense, and I'm so glad it did. Thank you, Fox, for going there, for giving the Deadpool movie the R rating it deserved, and then delivering with the proper R rating we had all hoped to see. And all on a $50 million budget? Are you kidding me? If I had complaints about Deadpool and why it's not necessarily number 1, is that I didn't love the structure, and I think it slowed down a little bit too much in the second act, in between like our intro, which was amazing, and then the ultimate fight at the end. It slowed down a little bit too much there. And also it felt a little bit small, a little bit contained, which I guess you come to expect when your budget is only $50 million. So that's really my only complaints with Deadpool. I absolutely loved it. And if it weren't for this number 1 movie, it had a clear shot at that top spot. But I wonder what could have been ranked number 1 on my list. That would be Captain America: Civil War. Oh, what a movie. Civil War was everything I had hoped, and I think DC had hoped Batman v Superman was going to be. So while Marvel feels very formulaic in their solo films, I think, especially in the Captain America crossover films, they are really pushing boundaries. This was so good. They introduced some amazing characters. Black Panther was ballin' in this movie, and I'm so excited for his solo film. Spider-Man was introduced really, really well, and I had a ton of reservations there. But we also beefed up some of our supporting cast members here. Falcon, just way better than anything I had seen him do in the past. Bucky, given a lot of complexities that he sort of was given in The Winter Soldier, again, just amped up. Scarlet Witch starting to really unleash those powers. Vision showing some personality. I just think that the whole cast was given something. And this was a huge cast, but they all had at least 1 or 2 moments to truly shine through and make their mark on the film. People are complaining a little bit about the villain, but hey, this villain succeeded in exactly what his mission was. But if we're being honest, this movie didn't even need a villain. The show we all came to see was Civil War. Captain America versus Iron Man. And that is exactly what we got. Marvel made this an emotional event as much as it was, big superpowered action event. We fully understood why each of these people were on the side they were on. Each side had its pluses and its minuses. We could kind of side with each one, both on a pathological sense as well as a purely logical sense. It was a pure difference of ideology, and that made it feel believable. That made it feel real and grounded. The stakes felt real. And once we got to that final battle sequence between the Winter Soldier and Captain America versus Iron Man, oh, it was gritty, it was raw, it was no holds barred, and it was just a purely emotional slugfest. And it was one of the best fight sequences I've seen in any superhero movie because the emotional stakes were raised so high. And plus, for just pure spectacle reasons, the opening action sequence and chase was amazing. And of course, that airplane hangar scene was just spectacular. So, Marvel continues to do superhero films better than the rest. But as we saw, some of the other studios are really kind of making them work for it. But for me, Captain America Civil War was easily the best comic book adaptation / superhero movie of 2016. So what do you think? Do you agree with my list? I know you'll disagree with some choices. Let me know what you think down below. Leave your list down below. I would love to hear everybody else's thoughts and opinions. Don't forget to like and subscribe and all that fun jazz as well. So, I love you all so much for your support. Mwah. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!